Hello and welcome to Loom Thread YouTube page. This is the first video I've done. My name is Brad and I'm the creator of Loom Thread. I wanted to take a little bit of time and show you a little bit about the app. I don't want to do a full tutorial today on everything the app does, but I want to show you the backbone, which is the project page. This is why I created Loom Thread in the first place. I had dozens of notebooks, dozens of pieces of paper all over my weaving studio that kept track of my numbers, and I kept losing them, not being able to find where I put certain things, and mixing them up with other projects. So I wanted something that kind of kept track of it for me. At first, it just did the calculations of the warp and the weft length, and then keeping track of WIF files and pictures, and it grew from there to an entire trapper keeper for your weaving. So we've got project tracking with pictures, PDFs, WIFs, anything you can think of there. We have a studio page that has your looms, your equipment, your yarns, everything that you have for your weaving. We have a Weaver's Resource Room, which has a books and media library that you can go and browse different books, search for different books, pull them to your own bookcase if you own them. I even create a little lending library. So got lots of functions on here. We're going to get through them all eventually, but today I just really want to focus on that project page because again, that's the backbone of the app. That's why I created the app and part that I'm really proud of. So let's take a look at it. So on your home screen, you're going to go to Projects, New Project. It's going to take you to the project page. And here we go. All right, so you see that there are several different modes right here. These are what you're signing up as. So it's going to default to whatever you did sign up with. If you have the free version, you're hobbyist, and that allows you one loom, 15 projects. Each project can have one picture, one PDF, one WIF file, as well as one warp and weft thread. So it doesn't let you do multicolor warps, but it will at least let you calculate total yardage, even if you are using other colors. If you want to keep track of even more, Maker Mode lets you keep track of a project with multiple warp and weft yarns. So if you're using 3 or 7 or 10 colors, you can do that. Plaids, things like that, you're going to be able to use all of those different warp and weft yarns in there and have it calculate each one separately for you. Production is a little heavier. It lets you keep track of projects in a totally different way. It lets you piece it down by what you're doing for the entire warp. So a production weaver might put on a 30, 50, 70 yard warp and want to do multiple types of projects on that. So they might be doing some blankets and then they might be moving to a tablecloth or something. And that's why I built it that way, so that they can take that one project and sub-portion it out into what they want. So if they want to do a scarf and then move into a shawl, they can have that second project show that it's the same warp, but the set is going to be different. It's going to be a little more open because they want it to be lighter weight, or they might be using a different weft yarn, totally different color scheme, different WIF files. So you can do that per sub-project within the main project. All right, today we're going to use Maker Mode. That's probably the one that most people will tend to use. It has full capabilities of just about everything. Lets you get through a project really easily. First thing you want to do when you do a new project is give it a name. So I'm using one of my projects that I have on my Etsy page. It's a turn taqueté towel set, and I went ahead and made some different fettling patterns for the towels that you might have seen from Susan Pogue in Hand Weaving 2019. It was circles and checks. Wanted to make some different motifs, so that's where this comes from. Again, it's on my Etsy page if you're interested. That is Brad's Warped. All right, we have planning stage. You can also do warping, in progress, finishing, or done. This comes in later when you might want to search for certain projects, or if you have multiple looms and you want to see which ones are in which status. That's why that's there. Who it's for. I'm going to make these as a gift for my mom. And it's a gift. You can put in a pattern URL. You can add a WIF, a PDF, or a picture at this time. A lot of times you're not going to add your pictures until after you're done because you might want pictures of your finished projects. You can also, though, add a picture of the pattern or whatever you're doing from whatever source you're getting. You can link that in here too. If you want any notes, you put it in here and it will add it with the time and date stamp. So, for Mom, Christmas 2026. Add, there you see the timestamp. You can put anything in here. You can put as many notes in as you want. So if you're wanting to put in notes about how you thread it, or you're sampling different yarns, or trying different sets, put that in your notes section, and it's going to keep track of it. So when you come back to this pattern, maybe in 2-3 years from now, and want to know what you did, you've got it all right there. All right. The first main thing that you do when you set up a new project is you set up your loom. Now, this is assuming that you've already set up your loom in the app, which is the first thing that you do want to do when you sign up. Go in and put in all the information about your loom. It's going to let you put in your waste yarn amounts, what your standard is there. It's going to let you put in how you normally warp, how long it takes you to slay it, how long it takes you to thread the heddles. All of that you can put in as a default in your loom. And that's going to carry over to your project. So it's going to know how long it's going to take you to do different things. So I'm going to start with my ABL K series. I named it Asher, and you can name your loom in here. We will then go in and see the Asher has a weaving width of 40 inches. It's got 40 shafts with a loom waist of 32 inches. All right, that 32 inches is going to carry over to your warp length, so keep that in mind. For these, I am doing this as a pattern planner, so I want to put in a finished width and length and have the app calculate how much warp I need. You can put your ends per inch in and everything in from a pattern, and it will not be affected by any take up or shrinkage because the pattern writer already did that. So if you are using a draft from, say, Jane Stafford or from handweaving.net, where the author of that pattern has already calculated all of that for you, all you need to know is your loom waist at that point. So when you're doing that, you're going to click that little following a pattern button right here. That's going to tell the system, hey, I'm putting in my own warp end numbers. Do not add take up or shrinkage. So that way it's going to match what you have on your patterns from the maker. But in this case, we're having the app calculate everything. So I need it to know what the take up and shrinkage is. So I want a total finished width of 18.5 inches per towel. So I've got 18.5. My set is going to be 24. All right, got that in. I do have drawing on my loom. I don't use a temple. I like having that little bit of a firmer edge that the drawing gives, and it's not that much. I have about a 1/4 inch per side. When you're putting your drawing on the app, you want to put in your total drawing. So take your one side, multiply it by 2, that's your final. So I have a 1/2 inch of drawing. So I'm going to add that. Oops. So there. All right, put that in the drawing instead of the set. All right, so we've got 0.5. All right, now since these are towels, I like a hem on my towel. I like a double hem on my towel. I think it gives it a little more structure. You can choose whether you're doing a single fold or a double fold, and it will give you a definition of both two when you select them. So double fold, here, it tells you that for a 1.5 inch finished hem, it's going to be 3 inches per hem times 2, because there's a top and a bottom hem. So it's going to add 6 inches to the woven length. Then it gives a description of what the double fold is. I like a little bit wider of a hem, so I'm going to do 1.75. You see there that it changed it to 3.5 inches per hem times 2, so 7 total. Okay, just another little side note. Right here you see plan by piece size or plan by warp length. This is so that if you know that you only have 9 yards of warp, you can plan your project based on that rather than the other way around. I tried to get everything in this app to reverse engineer so that you can make it however you need it to work based on how you work. So again, this app is made for all skill levels, and I tried to incorporate any possible way of doing things in it so that it accommodates the most weavers possible. So if you know you have 9 feet or 9 yards of warp and you want to build a project based on that, this will let you do that. In this case, we're just going to keep it at its default of planning by piece size because I know that I just want to make pieces of a certain size, and we'll go from there. I'm not following a pattern, so I can go ahead and go on down to the next section. Actually, let's move back up to read calculator. I almost forgot that. So those read calculator, you've seen online the read substitution charts. I incorporated that into the app. So when you click it, it's going to give you a list of reads. It's got 2 options. One is all reads, one is your reads. When you set up your loom, you're going to put in what reads you own for that loom. And then that's going to, again, carry over into your project page. So we click the read calculator, and at the 24 ends per inch, it knows that I have a 12 dent read. I can slay that 2 threads per dent to get an exact 24 ends per inch. Now, if I didn't have that 12 dent read, it also knows that I have a 10 dent read. In order to get as close to 24 as possible, I could do 23 ends per inch. It would be threaded as 223. So it gives you some different options to thread your reeds, to use the reeds that you have. I'm going to use the exact one. And now I'm going to move on to my warps. So for this particular pattern, it is a 2-color pattern. Use a light and a dark held together when you warp it. And I'm going to use 3 different darks and 1 light. So I'm going to be using yarns that are in my stash. So it lets you pare that down. So right now it's showing the entire yarn database. Right here, we're going to go to my stash. I want to go to cotton. And we have Maurice Brassard 8-2. I'm going to use natural for my base color. I'm going to go ahead and pick out all of my other yarns too. So I'm going to come right here, add warp yarn. Pick the yarn. Do the same thing. Cotton in my stash. Maurice Brassard, yellow. Pick my next warp yarn. Cotton in my stash. We're going to do denim. And my final one, and we're going to do burgundy for this one. Alright, so I've got my natural base color. I've got my 3 other colors. Now you see here, all the ends are assigned to that first yarn that I put in. So 496 ends, I need to change that a little bit. I've already calculated out that I want my stripes to be a certain width. And in this case, I know that I'm going to be using 78 threads of each color throughout the pattern. So I'm going to just start putting 78 in my colors, and that's going to automatically change what I need on that natural. So now it went down to 262 on my natural, still have all ends assigned. You can change these however you want, play around with it. It's going to tell you if you've gone over. So if I were to put 150 here, and then I change that to 350, it's going to tell me that I've gone over. I have 160 too many. So you need to change what you need. So we're going to change this back to 78. And then we need 262 ends back. All right, so now we have all ends assigned again. Got all of our warp yarns in. I do want to add a floating selvage. For this particular pattern, I find it helpful. So I'm going to go pick my yarn. I'm going to use the same one that I have for my main color there. So it's automatically going to add 2 ends total for 1 floating selvage. You can add more floating selvage. Some people like to have 2 threads together on each side, 3 threads, whatever you want, you can do that. If you wanted an alternate border and tracking that in a different way, you can do that here. All right, so now let's get into the next section. The next section is take up and shrinkage. So this uses an industry standard. Right now we are using cotton on all of our yarns. So I'm going to autofill cotton. You can see here that it has 10-6 for warp take up and warp shrinkage, and then 10 and 6 for the weft take up and weft shrinkage. Again, industry standards, if the yarn you're using through sampling you found that it has more or less, change it here. This is going to be where it is. If the yarn maker has let me know that their yarn has a certain take up or shrinkage amount, then that will be added in automatically. However, warp take up depends so much on the tension of your loom and everything else. You also need to sample and find that out for yourself. So it can be different based on that. So always take into account knowledge of your loom, knowledge of the yarns that you're using, what the industry standards are, what the yarn makers say, and even listen to your fellow weavers because they are a great source of information for all of this. Were I doing a scarf, I could do fringe. We'll show that function in another video. All right, now we get into the other part. You see, so far there's nothing in live calculations, nothing really telling you much. This is where you're going to start seeing some of those numbers. So first thing is, how many pieces are we doing? Let's do 7 towels. You're going to start seeing some numbers pop up. Finished length, we want 26 inches. Keep your eye on the right. There's your stuff. Now, we're not done. It's still not fine-tuned enough. You have a little more information that you need to put in here. First is weave structure. Different weave structures have different yarn take-up amounts. They have different over and under patterns that use yarn differently. So I've tried to capture that in here as best I could. Did a pretty good job on almost all the weave structures. There are a few that I'm still working on, such as double weave, and a couple of the more complicated structures, but we'll get to those as soon as we can. So for this one, it's turn taqueté. So I'm going to go to that section, and you're going to come back up here to the take up, and you're going to see that those numbers changed. And it tells you right underneath that for turn taqueté and cotton, there is a starting point of about 13% for the warp and 12% for the weft, so it does change it for you. And it's going to account for that in your final calculations. All right, so going back down, the next thing that we need to do is pick our yarn. I am going to use the natural Maurice Broussard again because I have found that that is the best when I use the 2 light yarns together and then have those other colors pop through it. So I'm going to go back to Maurice Broussard, natural, use natural. Last thing I need to put in here is my PPI. It's a balanced weave. I'm going to put in 24. Now, with that, again, you can add more weft yarns if you want. If you wanted the 7 different towels to be all different weft colors, you can do that here and factor that in. But I'm just using the one for today. It says I need 4,077 yards. And it's also now telling me that, hey, you don't have enough to finish this entire project as is. So we're going to have to buy more yarn. You can use this as a project planner before you start weaving so that you can find out, yes, you have enough yarn for something, or you're going to have to order some more. And it's a great way to know exactly what you have. When you put all of your yarns in your stash, it's going to know that. When you're done with a project, you're going to take those yarns out of your stash, and this is going to deduct those for you. So it's always going to keep a running total of all of your yarns. We'll get into that when we get into the yarn database and the yarn stash modules in another video, but they are really pretty cool. All right, so we have our PPI in. We know that we're going to need some yarn. We're going to keep going on this. I do want to include some sampling. I like to play around with this pattern, so I'm going to add a yard. If I wanted to use a different color weft yarn for sampling, I would click that and choose one. Otherwise, it's just going to keep me using the same one. And warping and planning. This is where those loom defaults came in. It defaulted to the warping wheel because that's what I put when I set up my loom. That's what I usually use with my AVLs, my warping wheel, and I have a sectional beam, so that's what I use. If it's a really complex warp, you are able to change the time that it takes you to do it. So if you have a lot of color changes, you can make it take a little longer here. Or if it's super simple, if you're holding 4 threads together and it's going to take you no time at all, you can just click that to make it take less time. Now going back to that warping method, I just want to show you that you have the warping board, mill, wheel, sectional, direct, back to front. You can change those at the project level. You don't have to keep your default. For one of my other looms, I use a warping mill. Sometimes if it's a shorter one, I might just want to use the warping board though. So just keep that in mind as you're doing your projects, that you don't have to stay with any of the defaults that you set. You can always override them. But in this case, we are keeping the warping wheel. Planning time, this is how long it takes you to plan your project. So 2¼ hours. We're going to go ahead and look at this next. We've got finishing time. If it takes you a certain amount of time to take it off the loom, cut it apart, stitch it, most people will zigzag stitch between their towels, then cut them apart, washing them, ironing them, hemming them, doing the pinning and the sewing of that, and then cutting any of the little loose weft ends that are poking through when you join your wefts in. All of that takes time, so you should account for that. So if that's 30 minutes per towel, you put 30 minutes per towel. If it's 20, you put 20. That's going to factor into the time it takes you to do the entire project. Not so much important on the maker mode or the hobbyist mode, although it's nice to know. But for production mode, that really does get into the crux of things because they're selling their items and they need to track their time. So I've built that in so that production weavers can actually track all the time that it takes them to do it. All right, your weaving speed. This again, you set up in your loom defaults, picks per minute. You can also do inches per hour if you would rather. And again, you can always override it. It's going to default to loom default. Threading speed, slaying speed, tie up, and sectional wind on. All goes to the defaults that you set up when you set up your loom, but you can change them here if you need to. All right, now let's get to the fun part, the live calculations. So with this, we have everything that you need to know about it. The weaving width is going to be 19.68 because remember, it's taking into account that shrinkage and the take up and everything in there. So it knows that it needs to be wider in the loom to get to that 18.5 inches finished width. It's going to be 486 ends, 2 floating selvages, grand total of 488 at the end. The total woven length is 282.45 for 7 pieces. The warp on the loom, after my 32-inch waist and my 1 yard of sampling, is going to be 350.45. Gives you my yarn requirements, again showing that natural color I don't have enough of. It's telling me that I'm going to need to buy 3 units, and it's going to cost about $38.07. Any of the yarn companies, I try to put in the most accurate prices. I do check them every so often, so they're going to be updated. However, there are certain partner yarns right now. We have Jane Stafford as one, and Yarn Barn of Kansas. They've partnered with us to update their yarns and verify that everything we have on the site is 100% correct to their standards. So I'm always going to have live price updates from them as well as color updates. I do go to the other yarns and check it. If you see something, let me know in the app. There are ways in the app to let me know if something should be included or changed. So we'll get into that again in other ones. So this tells you exactly how much yardage you need in each yarn. Tells you what you're short. And if we scroll down, you're going to have your total yardage. Warp is 4,851, weft 4,680. Got a total of 9,531. And then you have your finished cloth weight. So it gives you your total warp and weft weight, and then it's going to give you per piece. Again, not super important, fun to know, especially if you're shipping them. Just lets you have an idea of how much they are, so you'll have that right there at your hand. Then you have your shopping list. This is going to tell you what you need to buy. So if you're using this as a true project planner and pre-planning your project within the app, it's going to tell you what yarns you need to buy. You're also going to have links to those yarns so that you know where you can buy them at, have a link directly there. So right here, our estimated total of what we buy. Then we get into our time estimate, the threading, the slaying, the weaving, finishing, planning, everything on there. Go ahead and when you set up your loom, make sure if you're wanting to use that function, make sure that you time yourself so that you have accurate measurements. The ones I have in here right now are dummy. Of course, it takes me longer than 12 minutes to thread a pattern like this, but I just threw in some numbers at the moment. But you're going to be able to fine tune it, and over time, it's going to tell you how fast or slow, and you can change those defaults anytime you need to. So getting the loom ready is about 2 hours and 35 minutes. Weaving is about another 3 hours and 55 minutes based on my weaving speed on my AVL. So we're looking at a total of about 10 hours, 1 minute to do 7 towels. Average per piece, 1 hour, 26 minutes. Now for those people who really like to get nerdy and see how these numbers are gotten, you can click here and it's going to tell you. It's going to give you a narrative first of what we use to get those numbers. And then if you really want to get nerdy, hit the show the formulas button and it's going to show you all the formulas for how we got those prices, pieces, times, everything. So take a look at that, have fun with it, and you're going to have all your information stored here, and it's going to stay there in your project page so you can go back to it at any time. Once you are totally done with a project, so we're going to save it, and let's assume that we're totally done weaving that project. You're going to go to Projects, My Projects, and you see them here. Summertime towels are in progress right now. We're done. We don't need them anymore. So we need to deduct that stash from those yarns from our stash. So we're going to hit the Deduct Stash button. This is telling us what we are deducting. Again, this is going to show 0 yards remaining because we didn't go out and buy that yarn and update our stash yet, but you can imagine if we were. So this here is showing you everything else that you need. You're going to deduct from stash. It's going to give you an "Are you sure?" Yes, deduct from stash, and then it's telling you exactly how much yardage it deducted from your stash. So there you are. That is your project. Your stash is now clean. Take that yarn out of there so that you know how much you have left after that. That's the project page. And again, you can use as much or as little of that as you want. If you want it to be a little more easy breezy, you don't have to fill out as much stuff as long as you have your lengths and your widths in there and your set and your PPI. It's going to give you a total. If you're using different colors, that's fine. If you don't want to use the stash feature, that's fine too. It'll just give you yardage. Just pick whatever color you want. But it's all there if you do want to get as detailed as possible, if you do want it to track. Now also, when you are in a project, you do have, I promised you, a print sheet. So hopefully you can see that there. It does do a sheet that lists everything about it, your PPI, your yarns that you're using. So it's something that you can pin up on your bulletin board, tape to your loom, whatever you do, and show you what's on there. If you have a picture of the project on there, it will print the picture on there. So basically, you're also building a portfolio of your weaving projects as you go. So hope you enjoyed that. next time we will be getting into some other functions of the app. Close this. There are so many features of the app. Like I said, it does projects, it does yarn. You've got your My Stash, My Bookcase, My Equipment, My Looms. I want to go through all of those. You've got the yarn database, which shows all of the yarns that we can get in there, constantly adding more yarns in. We have the Weaver's Resource Room, which has your Yarn Shop Finder, a lexicon so that any of those weird terms you can pick up, the library and media, and equipment catalogs. And then we've got a fully functional help section. So whether you want to get into the help section or just hit your Command or Control K, you can get in there and find anything that you need to about the app. It'll search your books. It'll do everything that you need it to do. And as always, every single spot in the app has a suggest function. So if you need to suggest a yarn to be added to the database, if you want to suggest a book be added to the database or a loom type or anything like that, all you have to do is click a button, fill out a little information, and it'll let me know so that I can work on that. So thanks for joining. Hopefully you made it through the whole video. If you did, like and subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll know when a new tutorial video comes out. I'm going to try to get as many of these out as I can coming up. This is probably the longest one I'm doing because it's the most detailed, but the next one I'll be doing is going over adding a loom, and then we'll go on from there. So again, links are in the description. You can follow us on the social media there. You can ask a question if you have it in the comment section, and hope to see you next time. Thank you.